Oh yeah, one kickstart. Welcome YouTube, welcome to another moto vlog by John in Jeopardy. We are currently headed into a pretty cool canyon. It's about, I don't know, maybe about 30 miles away from my house. Kind of different, just kind of this random little deal out here in the middle of nowhere. So I figure, do a vlog out here going through the canyon. Today's vlog is kind of my riding story, like how I got started, how long I've been doing it, what I ride, blah 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 blah. That way you guys kind of get a little bit better idea of who's in the helmet. And so we'll just get started. I have been riding now for almost 20 years, I'd say, off and on. I've taken some breaks during that time, concentrating on other stuff, and I've definitely always been an enthusiast during that time, and I learned right when I was early high school times when I started riding my first motorcycle, which was I don't remember the year of it, but it was a Honda 90, so that pretty much tells you all you really need to know. Like, they didn't really change for years and years and years. And so it was a Honda 90, little scooter, and I rallied the hell out of that thing. That poor bike, freaking rev dropped that thing and tried to do wheelies in it. It didn't do wheelies very well. It was usually a lot of scars. But it was fun. I had a lot of fun. And it was actually, for a 90cc, and given the vintage of what it was fairly quick. Like, it wasn't fast. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it was quick. Once I finished with that, I got into bikes called Hodakas. They're not made anymore. The company still exists out of Japan. They make bicycles now, if I remember right. But back in the 70s, they built a series of small-engined. I think the biggest one they ever produced was a 250, and that one was pretty uncommon. But yeah, these little bikes, a lot of 100, 125s. Was kind of their 90 through 125 would be about kind of where most of them fell. They were hunter orange frames with bright chrome tanks. Like, if you saw one, like, you really can't miss it, especially if you kind of have an eye for bikes from that vintage. And so I rode an Ace 90, I rode an Ace 100 B, I rode a Super Rat, and I rode a Wombat and a Combat Wombat, and that probably sounds like a lot of bikes to go through. But what had happened was my dad had found a guy who was just selling a warehouse full of these things in all different shapes, and at the time eBay was just kind of getting started, and so the vintage bike market was just starting to get kind of take off. And so, you could sell anything on eBay that even remotely do with a vintage bike for a lot of money. And we sold a rusted out C-Pan. It was in terrible shape. I listed it as, it was in terrible shape. It was rusted out. And some guy still bought it for 30 bucks. Like, I couldn't believe it. So, anyway, so we bought this whole warehouse of stuff. The whole idea was to kind of build up some, sell some, and part out a bunch of them as well, and kind of make it a part-time business back when I was in high school. And so one of the side effects is I got to ride a lot of different bikes. And my dad was also really into motorcycles, and those were the ones that he rode when he was younger. So nostalgia, oh man, junior's along for the ride. But it was fun. I really liked those bikes. I think the one I probably rode the most was the Combat Wombat, which was just a little 125cc. And I rode that and I had a lot of fun with that. Also, kind of during the same time, me and my dad got into trials riding, which, for those of you who don't know, trials riding is those bikes that look really weird. They have really small gas tanks, no seat or just like a minimal seat, and they're designed for real tactical riding. You know, the whole idea is to get through a course full of obstacles, you know, trees, rocks, whatever, and not put your foot down. So we got into the vintage trials out here. And that was a lot of fun. My trials bike that I had was a 125 Bultaco, and the thing was just a tractor. I mean, if you just put it in first gear and just let out the clutch, didn't know it wouldn't stall. Like, that thing was geared so low, but I mean that's what you want for trials. But it was fun because it was an old Spanish bike. I got used to the reversed rear brake. For those of you who don't know, like old English, old Spanish bikes had the shifter on your left foot and the brake on your the shifter on your right foot and the brake on your left foot. Yeah, even now it still doesn't. It's still just totally backwards in my head. But yeah, so I got used to riding that, and yeah, we rode trials and whatnot, and then. And we decided to step up our game. So after we kind of rode a season with the vintage crew, we got newer trials bikes. And we're only a few years old when we got them, but they were the 321 gas. And man, that was like going from like an old farm truck to like a Ferrari. It was amazing the difference in those bikes and in the newer style trials bikes. I mean, I could do things on that bike that I just never would have dreamed on those older bikes. So that was a lot of fun. I never did any competitions with that. It's kind of towards the end of high school, and you know, things started changing, started getting a job, and you know, girls, and you know, starting to look towards other things. So still though, just didn't ride any competitions. The last bike I had during that time frame was an 81 Husqvarna 250 motocross, and a bike was a ton of fun, and it was, you know, it was older, whatever, but man, it had some pep to it. It could tear some trails up, and it's funny because Husqvarnas in particular, especially from that vintage and earlier, are really considered expert bikes, and so I really had to kind of to grow very quickly in my ability just to handle that thing. It was super tall. You know, it fit me, and I'm, you know, right now I'm just a hair under 6'2", so you know, definitely all of 6'2" with my boots on. And at that point in time, I was probably pushing 6 feet. You know, I don't think I'd quite finished growing. But yeah, even that, like, I was, you know, I could flat foot, but not by a lot. Like, it definitely was a tall bike. And so yeah, I had a lot of fun, ripped up the trails on that, smashed into a few trees, you know, the usual trail riding kind of nonsense. But that was fun. And then where did I go after that? I think I had that bike for quite a few years as kind of my primary rider, what I'd go out on. During that time frame, I kind of moved around a little bit. Lived in Alaska for a little while, lived in Oregon for a little while. So kind of got into other sports. I did a lot of rock climbing. I did some ice climbing up in Alaska. I also really got into four-wheel drives. I had that Husqvarna for quite a while, and then I did wind up selling it, and I was pretty much bikeless for 3 or 4 years, I guess. And so I just, you know, I was kind of doing other sports, doing other things, and but then, you know, I think as many of you guys probably can relate to, that itch kind of just started calling, and you know, I had to get a bike. I had to get back on things. Decided to grab a couple dual sport bikes, these Honda 600s, which are, you know, just they're not huge on power. Like, they're, you know, they're kind of an older bike, especially like today's standard, but they're just absolutely reliable bikes. They're just, it's what their reputation is, and they just don't give you problems. And we decided that was probably a good way for us to go. You get into them for, you know, a reasonable amount of money, And so we did, and that first year we took them out to Moab, and had a great time, ran some trails, had a few breakdowns, not engine related, mostly like I broke a rear rim, so I had to get that fixed. That was kind of a long day, but overall I had a good time, and yeah, just kind of been back into it really heavy, especially for the past few years. And yeah, so happy to be back on a bike. And I think probably in the not so distant future I'm going to be upgrading from this guy right here. It's a fun bike. I like it a lot, but you know, it's made for a shorter person, and like I spend a couple hours on here, and you know, things just start kind of locking up, and you know, and knees start, you know, hollering at me. And so yeah, something in the not too distant future I'm going to be probably looking at getting a BMW GS. I'd like to really get the F800 version. It looks like that'd be a great bike for pretty much everything I like to do, but not so big that it becomes kind of unwieldy on the trails. But we'll see how that goes. But that's really where I kind of got my eye on. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and close this one out here, guys. You can go ahead and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. All right, guys, have a good one.